Hi, my name is April Black, and I want to take a few minutes to share with you an easy way and an alternative framework for documenting evaluation and management services. The provider has a choice in the way and the mechanism and method to which documentation can be done for evaluation and management services. Many providers don't realize they have choices. They do. Many choices. One is 1995 guidelines. Two is 1997 guidelines. I'm sure you're familiar with. Those aren't quite working for a lot of us, but they exist, and the framework is quite complete and comprehensive and available. The other is time. Time-based codes is one, but then there's an approximation of time, and you're allowed to use time as a component, especially when it's the main component of the encounter, to base your billing. There's approximated times, but these times don't reflect the actual practice patient flow. It's an interest service calculation of the RVU taken by CMS, and for example, it says that a 99215 or an established level 5 patient you would spend at least 45 minutes with. I don't know very many physicians in the outpatient setting that have 45 minutes to spend with each patient that comes in with a comprehensive history and medical decision making. Therefore, billing on time isn't necessarily the best way to document and bill for evaluation management services. What is the best way to document and be billing and be paid for the work you're doing with evaluation and management services? It can be easy. The Simplification Act, an initiative being done by CMS, is taking steps in the right direction, but it's still several moves behind of where it should be. Let me remind you the one constant factor, the one constant element that is always required for and is the overarching reason and rationale for payment is medical necessity and medical decision making. So, if your documentation supports a complex medical decision making and the presenting problem, then you will receive that payment. Pardon me. Under the Simplification Act going forward. But let's talk about today, because today medical decision making is just as important as it will be in the future, if not more. So this is old news for everyone that knows. All services must be reasonable and necessary. They must be safe. They must be ordered. They must be medically appropriate. This is not new information. It hasn't changed, and it's not going to. This is the premise of all the coverage and payment contracts. Medical decision making. Again, this is the constant factor. While we're thinking ahead about the proposed changes in 2021 to E&M and the requirements of lessons for the burden of documenting history and repetitive details, there has been no focus on the main idea is medical decision making. Recording the medical decision making and medical necessity of each and every diagnosis or problem with a care plan and complete details will ensure proper payment as you move forward into the future under the alternate payment framework. So what are the must-dos for medical decision making? If you are going to frame medical decision making as a question answer or as a relationship to the other components that you're familiar with as history and exam under 1995 or 97 guidelines, you can relate them as a cause and effect. For instance, the presenting problem is the chief complaint. It's also going to be the final assessment in the first encounter reason, or one of the reasons or comorbidities or acute illness that the patient presents for. Those things should match and align. The patient presents with lifestyle risk or other preventative services, or upon history you find out they're a smoker, perhaps they need smoking cessation. All of these things tie together as you formulate your medical decision making. When you're ordering diagnostic tests or you're preparing lab orders to send out, then you want to make sure that you connect that diagnosis. You show that patient's acuity and severity and urgency to have that service and how it's going to benefit them and progress their improvement. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the patient's improvement, right? And the quality and the outcome of the evaluation and management service being more efficient, a better experience, and of course we want to get paid for the hard work that we're doing. We deserve to get paid, and it should be easier than it has been in the past. I want to point out this last bullet especially and say out loud, all abnormal findings and results must have a stated relationship to an assessed diagnosis or a problem under care. It must be included with the plan of care. For example, if you are a diabetic and you require insulin, I would expect to see the name of the drug that you take every day, and I would expect to see the dosage of that drug that you take every day to monitor that problem. And I would want to know how soon you need to follow up to make sure that you're checking your blood sugar and what are those readings. Those are the kinds of details that need to be included in the medical decision making in order to support the highest acuity that you deserve and earned. Here are two examples that I'd like us to talk about together. The first is a low complexity medical decision making. It's a progress note, and it's a simple, efficient note, the kind that we're hoping that we can get back to away from the redundancy and the duplication. So both of these notes are kind of to demonstrate both what kind of framework you can use to capture the reimbursement equal to that encounter level as appropriate, both using today's standards of evaluation management as well as 2021 and on. So the first example is Chad. He's 14. He returns to the clinic for a 2-week follow-up. He was seen last month for a cough with Dr. Y. He continues to have a postnasal drip with intermittent coughing spells. He has redness in his throat with evidence of ear and sinus drainage without an infection. And the assessment says rhinorrhea. Recommendations to continue daily nasal saline flush with over-the-counter Robitussin and cough medicine, 2 teaspoons as needed, and return to the clinic if it's not resolved in 2 weeks. It's a fairly straightforward, low complexity visit. If you're going to code it, 99212, established office visit, and J43.89 for the rhinorrhea. Now, there's very little HPI or medical history or review of systems present in that paragraph, but it clearly supports the low complexity based on the assessment, the plan, and the presenting problem, as well as the return of 2 weeks if it's not resolved. So now let's look at the example 2. In this case, Sarah, she's 31, she's a female, and she is new to the clinic after moving to town last year. She presents with a 10-year history of active AIDS and HIV, which she acquired due to high-risk sexual activity. Now, she complains today of right upper quadrant pain of 3 weeks. She's been coughing up some blood and having some difficulty breathing. She came to the clinic today and the vitals are noticed with a temperature of 102.4, which is notable for a fever. Other vitals indicate that she is hypercapnic. She has haxic, and then the exam was cut short due to a sudden onset. The patient had a seizure in the exam room. The seizure lasted 12 minutes. 911 was called. The patient rolled into the ambulance and arrived, taking Sarah to the hospital in stable condition. The physician noted a challenging case due to the urgency, risk, presentation, and complex history of the patient being non-communicative in a non-communicative status and without any accompanying records. So, what makes example 2 unique is that he doesn't have a comprehensive exam documented, and she doesn't have a comprehensive history documented. In fact, there's very little medical decision-making documented in the paragraph here, although it's quite clear that the patient was in an urgent state and required severe and medical attention and expertise. And in the meanwhile of the ambulance arriving, the physician was that person of expertise. So the billing based on time in this situation wouldn't really be to his advantage either, because the only time amount documented in this example 2 is 12 minutes. While I'm certain the patient was there longer than 12 minutes, it doesn't show that in the record. So if it isn't written down, then it didn't happen, and it can't be billed or it can't be proven. So thinking about the way that our structure and framework is for evaluation and management services using 1995 and 97 guidelines and time, this encounter would be quite limiting in the reimbursement model based on where we have been, what we have been doing for several years. But looking forward to 2021, this type of information is very clinically relevant and present and concise to describe that situation without all the fluff, without all the extra things that are redundant and duplicate. This says what happened and how severe it was, and it shows the signs of acuity and back to transfer until the patient was resumed care by another provider. So in this case, despite the time component because of the complexity, it would warrant a billing of $99205 in the future of 2021. Likely right now, it wouldn't qualify under 1995 and 97 standards for more than a level 4 or level 3 new patient because of the history and the partial exam and partial elements of medical decision making and planning of that plan of care that is absent in this paragraph. But I want to point out that the hierarchy of the diagnosis coding, because of the AIDS infection, that is always primary if it's active, and then the manifested conditions and mortalities are coded afterwards. In this case, it's only symptoms because there was no final assessment or diagnosis actually made in this case because the patient was transported to the hospital in an emergency state. I have a little note here that says D84.81 would also be applied for an immune-compromised person. That's a new proposed diagnosis for 2020. It wouldn't be effective until 2020, though. So, having these two examples in front of you, just to give you an idea of what the current program or framework for evaluation management is in comparison to the future framework, let's take a look at their payment model that's proposed in 2021. And you can see that the reimbursement is quite different. They're going to collapse that. So it's going to become more and more important that physicians streamline their documentation and adopt a framework of recording the elements that really target the clinical reality and explain the acuity and severity of that encounter.